The One Piece world is waiting on two sovereigns, and it is prophesied that the world will change when these two sovereigns meet. One is confirmed to be Shirahoshi, the mermaid princess who appears once every few centuries. The other was stated by the Sea Kings to be born in a distant sea. The Sea Kings wait for the day that these two sovereigns will meet. This is what we learned in the Gold Roger flashback. Most of us believed that Luffy was this other sovereign that the Sea Kings were waiting for. After all, Luffy is the second coming of Joy Boy. He is the one who will bring the dawn of the world. He is likely the one who is supposed to guide the mermaid princess and show her how to use her power. However, despite all that, it is very likely that Luffy is not this second sovereign that the Sea Kings are waiting on. With the recent events of the Reverie, and looking at an important detail that many readers may have missed during Fishman Island, it seems unlikely that Shirahoshi and Luffy are the two sovereigns, but rather it is Shirahoshi and Vivi. And with that, the true role of Vivi in the story comes together, as she may be far more important than any of us could have imagined. Vivi may in fact be the child of destiny, the key to the future of the world. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe and make sure that you stop wasting time every day by cooking, when you could just get ready-made meals with Factor, the sponsor for this video. If you live a busy life juggling work, hobbies, personal life, and so on, then save yourself some time by streamlining your meals. Cut down on grocery trips and spending hours every week cooking. You don't need that added stress every day. Focus your energies on what matters by just getting delicious, nutritious Factor meals sent straight to your door. Especially if you're trying to get fit this spring. Factor offers Protein Plus options with 30 grams more protein per meal. I know that most days of the week I am incredibly overloaded with work, which is why Factor has made my life so much easier by removing meal planning and preparation from my to-do list every day. I honestly can't even imagine having to cook at the end of a long day of work anymore. So head to factor75.com or hit the link below and use code MORGE50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. That's factor75.com, code MORGE50 to get 50% off your first Factor box, link in the description below. So that aside, yes, to begin with, Luffy seems like a natural fit for this mysterious second sovereign that the Sea Kings spoke of. The Sea King said that Shirahoshi would soon be born here at Fishman Island, and the second sovereign would soon be born somewhere else in some distant sea. Luffy was born far away in East Blue, and Luffy is obviously going to be a huge deal for the world, as the Pirate King, the new Joy Boy, and the one who will bring the dawn. And Luffy certainly seems like he's going to be the one to guide Shirahoshi in the future, as Otohime stated that that would be an important role. And Luffy had already begun guiding Shirahoshi during the events of Fishman Island itself, as well as promising to show her the rest of the world someday. However, while it might seem straightforward to pencil Luffy in as that second sovereign, what's interesting is that it was stated that what the Sea Kings were waiting for was the day that the two sovereigns would meet. This would supposedly be a huge deal, the meeting of the sovereigns. But it's interesting to note that Luffy and Shirahoshi met at Fishman Island, the entire arc went by, and nothing really happened. Their meeting didn't really bring about any sort of change in the world. In fact, a lot of time has passed since then, and we still don't look at Fishman Island being any sort of major trigger for the story. In fact, that was kind of just an in-between arc before we started the New World. It was really only once the Straw Hats began their adventures in the New World that the Straw Hats actually started stirring up some chaos. But more importantly than just the timing, the Sea Kings seem to have a great deal of awareness of prophecies and chosen ones. They knew Shirahoshi, the mermaid princess and their ruler, would be born soon, and they knew that the other sovereign would be born soon as well in some distant sea. However, when the Sea Kings actually begin to observe and comment on Luffy during the finale of the Fishman Island arc, they don't actually make any mention of him being the sovereign or the chosen one that they've been waiting on. Interestingly, they just comment on him being a particularly strong human, and they think that it's odd that he's capable of hearing their voices. This is a detail that doesn't seem to line up with the anticipation that the Sea Kings seemed to show during the Roger flashback. The Sea Kings in the flashback were patiently awaiting the meeting of these two sovereigns as some special event. It seems a little off if this special event actually happened right in front of their eyes, but they didn't actually seem to think anything of Luffy. They seemed completely unaware that Luffy would be this other sovereign that they were waiting on. They seemed to simply view Luffy the same way that they viewed Roger, as just some guy that is somehow able to hear their voices, but they're not really interested in him beyond that. Now you might be saying, well, that's not a huge deal. It's entirely possible that just because the Sea Kings know a lot about the prophecy of the two sovereigns, and can immediately recognize the mermaid princess as their sovereign, that doesn't mean they would be immediately able to recognize the other sovereign that is coming from a distant sea. And the exact time frame of the meeting of the sovereigns may be a little loose, even though nothing really happened during Fishman Island when Luffy and Shirahoshi met. Maybe it's a general ballpark time frame. What matters is maybe that at some point down the line, now that the two sovereigns have met, eventually the world will begin to change. That's entirely possible. And look, at the end of the day, so far Luffy has been the answer to everything. He's the one who will carry out the will of D, the one who will find the One Piece, the one who is the second coming of Joy Boy. All of that is Luffy, so yeah, maybe he's also the sovereign that the Sea Kings were waiting for. But there is another option. An option that may be far more interesting and maybe a far better fit for this specific role, and that is Vivi. Because Oda has actually singled out 4 characters for us that seem to be the keys to the future of the world. The 4 pictures that Im was looking at: Luffy, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and Vivi. And of the 4 pictures, Vivi was the one that was actually chosen by Im. Why are these 4 characters being highlighted? Well, we know exactly what Luffy and Blackbeard represent. They are the 2 final candidates to fulfill the will of D. In fact, the Marineford arc culminates with Whitebeard's dying speech talking about the will of D, specifically citing Blackbeard as the wrong type of man to inherit the will of D, and simultaneously implying that Luffy would be the right man to inherit the will of D. It's likely that Luffy and Blackbeard stand out to Im as representing the 2 parallel paths to the fulfillment of the will of D, the 2 greatest threats in terms of becoming Pirate King and bringing a new era to the world. However, then why are Shirahoshi and Vivi there? You could say that it's because Shirahoshi is an ancient weapon, and you could say that Vivi is there because Vivi is a descendant of Lily, and Lily has been on Im's mind for some reason. But at the same time, it may be because Vivi and Shirahoshi parallel each other much like Luffy and Blackbeard do. It could be that the pictures of the 2 princesses are there because they are the 2 sovereigns of prophecy. Going back to the significance of the meeting of the 2 sovereigns, this is an event that the Sea Kings greatly anticipated, and interestingly, while nothing really came of Luffy and Shirahoshi's meeting at Fishman Island, at what point in the story did the entire world really start to turn upside down? Everything that we're seeing, the flames of rebellion rising, Im erasing islands, the Shichibukai being abolished, the entire world going into war and turmoil, all of it began with the Reverie, the point in time that Vivi and Shirahoshi met. It's also interesting that both Vivi and Shirahoshi have been relatively important over the course of events in the Reverie so far, with the ongoing plotline of Charlos repeatedly trying to capture Shirahoshi, and Vivi we know is soon going to make headlines as the major missing princess in the aftermath of her father's death. Obviously, that doesn't mean that Shirahoshi and Vivi's meeting has literally been the actual trigger for the world to change, just that it's interesting that their meeting coincides with the turning point for the entire world to go into chaos, and they're both prominent figures in the storyline where it all starts. Could we have already witnessed the meeting of the 2 sovereigns? Because ultimately, what really makes Vivi fitting for the role of the other sovereign is that is simply who she is. She is written to be the ideal ruler. Yes, Luffy fits the idea of a king, but it's a certain type of king. One who many may follow, but at the same time a king who does not want to rule anything. In fact, Luffy is not a king who is fit to rule anything. He would be terrible in a ruling role. His role is ultimately to bring the dawn, to tear down the evil established order and give birth to a new world. And that is the role that Luffy has always played throughout the story. But what comes after that? Rather than creating the dawn of the world, who will actually lead the world into the new dawn? Remember, the world will still need a government after the Celestial Dragons are defeated. It still needs leadership that has been explicitly established. The goal is simply to take down the Celestial Dragons at the helm of the government. And in that vein, Vivi is designed to be the perfect candidate in every way. Vivi's entire storyline, from Baroque works through Alabasta, was to position her to the reader as the ultimate kind-hearted, wise ruler, the model image of what a queen should be. From the start, she was the one actually teaching Luffy how to be a better leader for his crew. Over the course of Drum Kingdom, one of the major contrasts was in how Wapol was a cruel and selfish leader compared to Vivi, who was kind-hearted and selfless, and how she was in fact a natural-born leader in many ways. As Dalton observed that even as a child, Vivi was intuitively an amazing diplomat. And finally, in Alabasta itself, we see how Vivi's story started with her as a child gaining respect from the leader of Alabasta's children, Koza, and how things came full circle at the climax of the arc, with her having to show Koza the light as an adult and the true path to saving Alabasta. Vivi's entire story with the Straw Hats ends with an exemplary display of leadership, as she ultimately chooses a life of responsibility, watching over and ruling her country, over a fun life of adventure with her friends. And interestingly, this stands out as a sharp difference between her and Odin. Odin, who was a strong warrior but never a great ruler, as he made the mistake of abandoning his nation and letting it fall to ruin, while he chose a life of adventure instead. If there is any single character in all of One Piece who is written with the express purpose of representing everything that a good, kind-hearted, brave, and diplomatic leader should be, who can command respect and be a voice of reason, it is Vivi. She is designed to be the perfect sovereign, and that is likely why we see Vivi written into the story not just as the ultimate combination of leadership character traits, but also as the perfectly positioned character in terms of influence, ties, and allegiances. To begin with, Vivi actually technically has the blood of a celestial dragon. The Nefertaris are, after all, one of the 20 founding families of the world government. And today, the Kingdom of Alabasta is highly respected in the political sphere. With Cobra dead, Vivi is now the rightful queen of Alabasta. She is already at the helm of one of the most influential nations of the world, at a point in time where the entire world is about to undergo a great political change. At the same time, Vivi is secretly a member of the Straw Hat Pirates, meaning that she will have a powerful connection to the rebel forces that will ultimately overthrow the world government. Vivi will be the only one who can truly understand what they are doing and provide a voice to make the other nations of the world understand the correct side that they should stand on in the coming war. Beyond that, Vivi is primed to be a guiding force in the political world, not only during the war, but more importantly, after it is over. After the Celestial Dragons are torn down, there will be no semblance of order. And yet, a world government is still needed, as the revolutionaries have explained. And so for the nations of the world to come together in the wake of the final war, after all established order has collapsed, when the world government needs leadership to survive and reform, who is the one voice that is poised to have the most influence? It's not Luffy, a pirate. It's not Sabo, a rebel and revolutionary. All signs point to Vivi, the leader of the respected nation of Alabasta. And so I look at Vivi and Shirahoshi. While Luffy will have the most influence in actually bringing the dawn, I think the purpose of these two princesses as the two sovereigns may be in the wake of the dawn. Shirahoshi may represent the sovereign of the sea, the leader of not just the fishmen and the mermaids, but perhaps all the ocean, the leader of the sea kings themselves. Which is an interesting idea, considering sea kings are one of the primary reasons that humans are so restricted in being able to freely travel the seas. I wonder if that would be different under Shirahoshi's rule as sovereign of the sea. And on the other hand, I believe we will have Vivi, the sovereign of the land. Not in some sort of dictatorial role like Im, but just as the most important and influential leader in the new world government, the one who can bring order and unity to the various island nations of the world. Maybe Vivi will be the first chairman of the first reverie to begin the new era of the world. Either way, Shirahoshi and Vivi represent the two leaders that emerge with the dawn of the world, and as such, they are the two figures that Im fears above all else. But let me know if you agree with Vivi's role in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe. And you can get my extended thoughts podcast on this and all future topics by supporting me on Patreon. Just hit the link in the description below.